now. Howard, if you want to take it away.
Thanks very much, Tom. I'm just loading up the slides and hopefully they'll appear in a minute. Are you seeing the slides?
They're coming through, Howard.
Right. Well, I'd like to start off by just thinking a little bit about real-world climate education and 1.5 max, and I'd actually like to start on a personal note for those people who've been tracking what's in the news at the moment. My own hometown, which is Durban, South Africa, is experiencing flooding, the likes of which I've never known in my lifetime. And it's resulted in something like 450 deaths and 40,000 people homeless. I raise that because it's the kind of real world experience of climate that we're all finding that we know about, whether it's in Nepal, whether it's in Malawi, and whether it's in Mozambique, the three countries who were involved in the first of our 1.5 max events. And I'd like to just point out something which is sometimes overlooked. The idea that climate change is simply the same thing for everybody. It just so happens Durban has been affected. That's not the full story. The story is much more complete when you know that there are people who've died as a result that needn't have died, and there are people who've become homeless that needn't have become homeless had conditions been better. And the aspect of climate change and vulnerability is a very important connection that we make in 1.5 max. And I'll simply relate it to what our experience was in our first 1.5 max event. During the preparations, we had landslides in Nepal that Laxmi experienced, which had an impact on his ability to attend. And everybody who was involved in that preparation was really, it brought it home to all of us. This is something that's real, and it's not something that's just we're reading in a newspaper. In 1.5 max, we're dealing with real events. And I'd like to just go through a little bit very briefly about the ideas behind 1.5 max. So the first point is this limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures. This is something that has been agreed internationally as from 2015 at the Paris Agreement. 192 countries and the European Union agreed to pursue limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. It's recognized, it was recognized then that it's important. And since then, it's become very much clearer as a result of an enormous IPCC report that was produced in 2018. And since then, we know it is very, very dangerous to go to 1.5 degrees. We're already experiencing real impacts at our current temperature of 1.1, 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures. Something that David Attenborough said in 2021 in the lead up to COP26, he said, staying below 1.5 degrees is the only chance we have of avoiding these tipping points and stabilizing our world again. It's very important. We have tremendous risks as a planet once we go to 1.5 degrees and beyond. And the third quote there is from one of the authors of the IPCC Sixth Assessment Report, Jim Skee, who happens to be a Scot. he said it's now or never if we want to limit global warming to 1.5. It's vital. We've got to do it now. We can't continue waiting. So moving on to the issue of education of young people and why we are so committed to it. We're a group based in Scotland called Sustainability Partnerships, and we're committed to finding a way to have quality education around the world to enable young people to learn about climate change, but more than that. We're wanting young people to also be confident in knowing that they have a right to act in their own interests. So it's more than just education and learning and turning away and just dealing with it as an exam in a few months' time. That's not the kind of education we're talking about here. We're talking about giving young people confidence. And the third aspect is that aspect we call empowering to act, empowering to take action which makes a difference. And there's a second point that is being made on this slide. The second point is, as the impacts of climate change intensifies over time, it is the children and young people today who will face the worst effects. This is very important. When we hear older people not taking action, they are not the ones who are going to have to live in the second half of the 21st century. Young people do have to live in the second half of the 21st century. They have different issues. They must solve the issue. They have a right to act. We need to be getting serious about climate change and sustainability education. The recent report by the Education International, looking at the level of ambition in countries around the world, indicates that the countries are not prioritizing climate education. They conclude with the statement, the results are dismal. They are very inadequate. So it is about time that we find a way to bring climate education to a point where it's recognized to have a very significant part in terms of tackling climate change. And here's a summary position of 1.5 max on climate change and sustainability education. 1.5 max is serious about climate change. 1.5 max, the event, is a much needed opportunity to raise the subject of climate and sustainability education, empowerment and action. Education, empowerment and action is vital to avoid runaway climate change and environmental degradation, and to mitigate impacts that are happening now and those that are inevitable, and manage the risks of future disasters. I'm going to stop there as an introduction, but I wanted to cover that because I want the people who are involved in the activities, and Tom will go through what we did during the 1.5 Max Summit last year and what our plans are going forward. But I did want to provide a context for our own motivations in that. And Tom, if it's okay, I don't know if you can move on to the next slide. If you can't, I'll just move you on.
Thank you, Had, for that absolutely vital context that you've given to what we're trying to do. I'm going to try and take control of the presentation. I think that's me now in control, so I can move the slides myself. So what I'm going to do is try and give you now some background as to what we actually did do in 2021, which was something we felt would be, a vital thing in the run-up to COP26, is that schools felt as if COP was almost coming to them a little bit, that they were getting a chance to feel empowered themselves in the fight against climate change. So we held the summit from the 5th to the 7th of October 2021 in 9 schools from around Scotland, who were carefully selected to be as diverse as we could possibly manage. So coming from different regions, from rural, from towns, from cities, from islands, but also crucially mixed socioeconomic backgrounds. So we were quite careful to have a pool of very diverse, what we call SIMD, Index of Multiple Deprivation in Scotland, so that we were extending opportunities to schools across the country. But we also had 4 schools, 4 absolutely wonderful schools, might I add, from some of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. So we had 2 schools in Maputo in Mozambique, 1 in Zomba, Malawi, and one led by Laxmi, who's here with us today, in Janakalian Secondary School in Nepal, all of whom have experienced significant issues with pollution, deforestation, flooding, drought, in some cases coastal erosion. There are schools in Scotland that were also facing significant issues with the potential of future flooding, coastal erosion, and some other issues too. So what we wanted really out of this, out of bringing all these schools together, just in the lead up to COP26, was a rich and engaging learner-led experience, something which would empower them. And we were essentially aiming for an experience of the 3 days that was unforgettable, something that would stay with them. And that was going to involve allowing the young people to listen to one another from across the globe and across the country, a kind of emotion to it, where we're kind of dealing with the emotions associated with the losses incurred by climate change, just some of which Howard mentioned earlier, responding to one another, talking about the issues, learning about the issues, thinking creatively about the issues, and that sense of working together, that sense of solidarity across the globe, and solidarity with one another within the school and within the country. So we wanted something that was going to be meaningful in terms of that group setting where everyone is supporting one another, hearing from one another, and learning from one another. So what actually happens during a 1.5 Max Summit? Well, there's a few kind of key things, a few key activities. The first one I'll mention is the Getting to Know You session. So this essentially starts before the event even takes place. Pupils were asked to prepare PowerPoints and pictures, videos, sounds, which essentially provided an introduction to themselves, to their school, to their area. Kind of one of the ones that comes to mind for me is the Western Isles of Scotland. We had a cluster of 4 schools in the Western Isles who were joining us, and they prepared a huge amount of material, including aerial shots of the beautiful beaches and landscapes of the Western Isles. They had videos of music being played. There were schools that just took a video of a pupil walking into the school from their point of view, so that pupils could really put themselves in the shoes of a pupil going to another school they were not previously familiar with. So it was wonderful material they prepared about where they live and who they are. And then during the summit, there's a session for the young people to actually introduce themselves verbally over Teams and have these short discussions, have these actual getting to know you sessions. So during the summit, the young people also have an opportunity to look at some of the material produced by children from other schools, and kind of break the ice that way, just get that little bit of, I know you and I hear you coming through. And that's the kind of initial stage of the summit. And the other main activity that runs across the 3 days, day 1, day 2, and day 3, is what we call the Ideas Lab, which is essentially a space to work on local climate and sustainability problems as a group. That's a core thread of the summit. And this begins with the identification of some form of local climate or sustainability problem that's occurring in the area before the summit. And so we ask schools to prepare a problem statement, a description of the problem, and preliminary ideas for taking action that they put into a PowerPoint format, and then present to the group. And these kinds of problems were ones that were identified as being extremely pertinent, something the children felt were most important, that they could work on, that they could try to resolve in some form. And this included local waste management, use of single-use plastics, insufficient plant cover in school grounds, all sorts of things came up. And then basically the idea behind the Ideas Lab is that it begins with the pupils reviewing the problem statements across the whole cluster, including the climate vulnerable countries, including the schools in Scotland, and reviewing those problems and presenting them to other school groups. And then they use this as inspiration to then brainstorm their own solutions, sometimes incorporating some of the good ideas that they saw in the other group's problem statements in the outline. And the final stage of that is some kind of artwork, some kind of communications exercise, which is inspired by the issues they've been reading about and hearing about, and communicating what their action is going to be. So examples of that included a theatre performance, which was essentially a campaign against excessive waste and pollution in Josina Machel, the school in Mozambique, one of the schools in Mozambique. Developing a board game in the case of Turriff Academy in Scotland. They developed a board game where players would move around the board through the town of Turriff and would be rewarded with points for environmentally sustainable actions that they took. There were people who produced posters and infographics, newsletters, rewrote school improvement plans, planted trees, all sorts of things that were happening across the cluster. And that was then passed on to a review panel who gave a review and feedback on those outputs from the school groups on the final day. And this provides support and encouragement to the schools, essentially, and an opportunity to hear next steps. So the panel would go, we thought this idea was wonderful, and this is where we think you can take it next. So that momentum is maintained after the summit is finished, and hopefully bolstering the self-confidence of the young people that what they've come up with is something manageable and it's something that can make an impact. And then the final session in the whole summit is pupils setting pledges, which they then sign so that these things are taken forward. And what we're now doing is we're working with a partner community group, Scottish Eco Clubs Unite, on an initiative called From Pledges to Projects, which is going to, in future summits, seek to turn those pledges into something that is sustainable beyond the summit itself. Because people go back to work, teachers go back to work, and they get overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that's on their plate, and it can be very hard to keep up the momentum on these pledges, but we're very aware of that. We want the excessive teacher workload that is there in all countries to be taken in mind all the way through 1.5 max. I'm going to move to the next slide here. So what's involved for a teacher taking part in 1.5 max? So before the summit, what we would need is for teachers to let us know, the 1.5 max team, that you're interested in taking part and obtain support from your school. That might be your head teacher or your senior management, or even somebody in your local authority. And after that, you would receive confirmation from us once that's communicated that your school is a participant in the next round of summits. There will be meetings in advance of the summit, global school preparation meetings, including every teacher signed up for that summit, including some climate change education, facilitation training, helping pupils prepare, reviewing the technology available and whether or not it's working, reviewing the venue that you're going to use and the time you've got available. And in order to hit on all of these points, we will ask for teachers to attend a 1-hour meeting once a week for 8 weeks in the lead up to the summit. Those 8 meetings will cover all the points that are needed to prepare. In terms of during the summit, the role of a teacher is, as I say, attending those meetings, but it's also facilitating the 3-day workshop, which is essentially led by the learners. As much as possible, we're asking for teachers, and there will be training on this, to pass over the leadership mantle to their pupils in taking these actions, these climate actions. And where possible, to take photos and videos, which we can use to showcase the wonderful work that your pupils are doing. Just please note as well that support will be available from us for using the technology involved. We've also sent, where schools have been short on technology, for example, broadband laptops, and in some cases catering, we've arranged for schools that need that to be provided with it overseas. We'll also provide an event guide for teachers with details on facilitating all activities, which teachers will familiarize themselves with before the summit. If you are a student, and I understand we have somebody here today who's from Glasgow School of Art, there are many roles, possible roles for students taking part in this summit. The main one being that the opportunity to lead the summit meetings in preparation. So essentially coordinating it, for which there will be training. And you're basically coordinating professional development for teachers by doing that, taking on a significant leadership role. There are other roles available, including preparing promotional material and graphics, social media to promote the summit, and developing blended learning resources which we can use to further improve the summit. There's loads of other possibilities if you're a student to get involved as what we're calling a community climate ally. There will be more information on our website about that very shortly. This is just a few pictures of students and their work over the summit. The summit activities all involved collaborative working, reaching agreements, and co-producing their outputs, their final communications. And we really feel the event was a serious success in at least 3 ways that I'm going to outline for you here. The general feedback, first of all, both from the surveys and informal comments we were told from learners and teachers, was overwhelmingly positive. One thing we're particularly proud of is that those in the most disadvantaged groups in the cluster indicated that they were particularly affected by their experience. So, prominent example for us, hospital education service pupils in Scotland. In Glasgow, the hospital education service is essentially a bedside school where pupils are, typically kind of stuck in the hospital, and then the education needs to be brought to them. Their teacher, Liz, described them as being the most vulnerable pupils in Scotland for her. You kind of cut off from society as they felt, and they said that this summit was transformational for them, in her words, because it opened up the world. And after the 1.5 Max Summit, they now want to save the orangutan. They want to save the planet. And that we are immensely proud of having heard that. Laxmi's pupils in Nepal also spoke very highly of the experience they've had. I won't dare speak for Laxmi later on in the Q&A session, and we hope to hear from him as well. And it appears that both of these groups were inspired by the experience of being given time and respect to engage over an extended period on matters that were important to them in their communities. Climate and sustainability action as well by the participating school children has been given a boost in these cases. So one of the schools dramatically increased participation in their Eco Club from 7 pupils to 35. That's Musselburgh Grammar School in Scotland. And the portfolio of actions at that Eco Club has been substantially increased. Some teachers are increasing their own involvement in climate and sustainability initiatives in their school by starting an Eco Club or other things. So we're very, very proud of the summit's legacy in 2021. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to pass back over to Howard to talk to you about what's coming next, what we're doing in the lead up to COP27 in 2022.
Thanks very much, Tom. I'm going to describe this at a fairly high level and hope that if you have particular questions, we can deal with those specifically. So to remind you, 1.5 Max 2021 was held in October in the lead up to COP26, which was held in Glasgow. We will be running 1.5 Max in October 2022 in the lead up to COP27, which is going to be held in Egypt in Sharm el-Sheikh. And we would hope that on this occasion there will be even greater input from African schools. So our focus, where last time we had a total of 13 schools, on this occasion we're looking to have 45 schools taking part, 30 from around Scotland, and again deliberately as diverse as is practically possible, and 15 schools from African countries. And I should say that we are also expecting that at least Nepal, Janak will also be taking part, but the focus will be on African schools. In part, that's because the COP27 summit is being held in Africa, and there's a real belief that this is an opportunity to bring African issues to COP, where previously many of the COPs in the past have focused very largely on mitigation, issues around financing third world countries, and the topics of technology for third world countries needs to be brought into focus. And of course, the key topics of adaptation and loss and damage also, we're hoping, will be part of COP27. We're hoping to expand the 1.5 Max organizing team, bringing in university students who can contribute in many ways. We've got university students who are part of our core team, and we're seeing tremendous value with having them available and contributing. In the process of preparation, we'll be developing education and empowerment resources that we hope will also be usable outside of the summit. So whilst the summit is for us a critically important flagship project for us, we're hoping to be able to extend what we're doing and support schools outside of the time of the summit, both before and after. So just in summary, we're looking to scale up, and this session here today is to establish whether we're finding people who are interested, and this is not a commitment at this point, but we'd just like to know if there are groups that we're coming across that would be interested in knowing more and perhaps contributing either as participating schools, or alternatively in being able to coordinate an area. We're conscious that having 15 schools from Africa, it will be very helpful to start bringing groups from around Africa to play a coordinating role in the Global Summit. So I'm going to stop at that point and ask if there's any questions and answers. Any questions? We'll provide the answers. Tom, do you want to just take over again in terms of asking whether or not there are questions?
That's fine. What I can perhaps do, Howard, just while folks are thinking of any questions they have, I could ask you a question, if that would be okay.
Of course.
Why the preponderance of schools in Scotland? Why a majority of schools in Scotland in 1.5 Max?
Well, that's a good and obvious question. The initiative has developed out of Scotland, but there's strong reason to take the view that Scotland provides a very strong example of potential approach to climate and sustainability education. I'll just make a couple of points about Scottish climate and sustainability education. Firstly, in Scotland, it's a devolved area of government. Education is in the hands of the Scottish government, and we're seeing decisions that are distinctively Scottish and local in the way that this is happening. In Scotland, we have a strong commitment to the rights of the child. The Scottish government has made a commitment to giving voice to young people and incorporating the voice of young people in schooling. This is very important and is connected closely to the way in which we undertake 1.5 Max. There's also an important report that has been commissioned by Scottish Government. It's called Putting Learners at the Centre. And this is a report that has been consulting with young people and is calling for a national debate about the education system in Scotland. They will be, they are proposing a greater emphasis on rights of the child, in particular Article 29 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which places emphasis on respect for young people, to each other and to themselves, and then also the respect for the environment, which connects very closely to what we're doing. And the other point is one of the principles that is being proposed in this report is to put climate education in the center of education in Scotland in the future. Very important indeed. I could go on, but I see there's a question, so I'm going to stop there.
Okay, Linda, do you want to go for it?
Yeah, thank you, Tom and Howard. The presentation was really great. Thank you so much. I'm just curious, as you have emphasized on learner-centered and also on the need for. I know that there's a climate crisis, and so climate education is quite important. And there's also been a good catch from the Scottish side, from your side, while in Malawi you only had contacted one school. I want to find out if you are going to increase the number of schools that you're going to involve in this summit. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, the answer to that, Linda, thank you very much for that question, is yes, we are. We're looking to get 45 schools in October 2022, followed by another 40 in, no, that's not correct, is it? 36 schools in March of 2023. And we're looking for substantially more involvement, as Howard was talking about, from African schools and more representation per cluster from African schools. In terms of the kind of proportion of schools in each cluster, there will be 9 per cluster as opposed to 13 per cluster, and 1/3 will be African schools in every single one. So we're looking for a more equitable approach this time. Howard, I don't know if you want to come in on this point as well.
Yes, if I can just add, Linda, that we're at an early stage in terms of engaging with schools, and it's not a straightforward process to say these are the schools that we will include, but we would be very pleased if you treat it as being an invitation at this point. If you're interested in being involved and perhaps even coordinating the identification of appropriate schools and working with us in helping us find schools for the upcoming summits.
Thank you so much. Just to follow up on the question, I've seen a hand from my colleague Hendricks. I just also wanted to bring to, I don't know if you know that we recently just launched a joint partnership guide between the Malawian schools and the Scottish schools. So we already have schools that are working in partnership between Malawi and Scotland. So I was thinking that those schools would be a good starting point, so that we already have schools that are talking to each other and that are already in partnership. So if you would want, as Malawi Scotland partnership, would be really happy to work with you so that we could reach out to those schools that are already working with the schools that are in Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that information. We're certainly looking at trying to follow through on schools already in partnership with other schools around the world, but we'd love to speak to you further about that. Thank you.
Most certainly, thank you, Linda. Can I go to Nakata Hendricks?
Thank you, Tom and Howard, for this nice meeting, which you have highlighted about the 1.5 max. I look at it as a good initiative because collectively we can do something towards the impacts of climate change that were affecting us. I just want to find out from you, this summit will be happening in October 2022. I don't know if maybe prior to October there will be like a pre-meeting towards that, so that I know it's not all the schools that will participate, but maybe if chances can be given, preparatory week can start engaging the schools. Then when it comes to October, now we can filter to have the school that could participate on that one. Further to that, I've heard you saying that this time around you also go to universities. I was also trying to support the question which Linda posed, that maybe if we could know the number of those schools, so that since Malawi Scotland Partnership is a member based and we have some schools that are members, we could maybe have an area engagement planning for the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can perhaps address the first part of what you were saying, is about the run up to the summit. We would be wanting to start the meetings leading up to the summit to prepare teachers in August of 2022, because as I say, there are 8 meetings leading up to it once a week for 1 hour. The other part of your question about the Scotland-Malawi partnership and about the clusters that already exist, I might go to Howard on that one, if that's okay.
I was just going to add one point, Hendricks, about the time between now and August as well. At the moment, we do not have all the schools who are participating, and we would like to engage in a way so that we know exactly who would be available to participate, how that would work, what technology they have available, what teachers do they have available, and all these issues really need to happen prior to August. So there will be an engagement prior to that point. What I would say is that we would be delighted to work with Scotland-Malawi Partnership in a way that could help be of use to schools in Malawi and could be of help in 1.5 Max preparing for the event. I think what is obvious is that it being close and being on the ground in Malawi, in Lilongwe, perhaps having colleagues in Zomba and in other areas around Malawi would be extremely helpful for us. And if you can support that, we would be extremely pleased. So thank you for inquiring about that.
Thank you, Hendricks.
I was just going
Howard,
to say, Tom, if there's no immediate questions now, I was going to try and ask Laxmi to just give a little bit of a response from his experience. Laxmi, I wonder if you could just say a little bit about how you have found working with 1.5 Max and how the pupils in your class have reacted to the event.
Yeah, last event I have to revise. You mean? Yes, no, the 1.5 Max we had last year was very wonderful, and we learned many things from the event, from the summit. You know, our students also got lots of exposure with foreign students as well, and also they got the idea about 1.5 Max and the ideas of climate change. Really, the event was, very wonderful and fruitful to us. And in the upcoming event also will be very effective and also applicable for us and for all the participant schools from Africa and Scotland and Nepal as well. I'm hoping, I'm looking forward the event, Yeah.
Thanks very much, Laxmi. That's very good. Does anybody in the audience wish to ask Laxmi any question about 1.5 max, the summit and preparation?
Yeah, here in my school.
Sorry, I was asking whether other people who are attending the meeting might have a question for you.
It looks like we don't just now. I mean, Howard, would you like to ask that? You have a question for me, I believe, as well. We could do that while folks are thinking of any other questions they have.
Yeah, Tom, what I know that you covered briefly why we felt that the event is a success, but could you just go through a little bit more about the feedback that we got on the event and other things that have happened as well? You might mention a very senior person, as you put it, who made contact with us after the event.
Well, yes. I mean, what happened after the event. I'll start with the feedback, and then I'll go to that. But for the pupils who took part in the summit across schools in Scotland and overseas, the thing they found most powerful was getting to talk to children the same age as them in totally different areas, totally different schools, experiencing totally different, sometimes more extreme issues in relation to climate change. They found it rather powerful, in particular in Musselburgh Grammar School, seeing images of a waste dump where with waste essentially burning out in the open and causing immense pollution in this area where the school in Maputo was based in Mozambique, so much so that they then included that in their next school assembly. They ran an assembly around the issues they'd found out about from Mozambique, which I thought was rather powerful to hear about. I think just in general, it was just the sheer inequity and inequality, the injustice of the impacts being faced in countries overseas compared to here. The fact that climate change is affecting Laxmi's pupils in Mozambique, pupils in Malawi now, and in far more unjust a way on the basis of lack of carbon emissions there compared to here. And I think just in general, they loved the sense of getting stuff done. As soon as the Ideas Lab started getting into actually working out solutions, they found that really constructive and really empowering. And they thought, it's great. We're actually getting time to work on these things, to sort things out, which we wouldn't otherwise have. I can read a couple of people's remarks from the survey. I really enjoyed it. I was able to speak to other schools, and I was very inspired by other schools' actions. And I think we can apply that in our community. I learned a lot of things I didn't know before and became aware of things I hadn't known previously. I found it very good, and it was nice to get to know everyone else's situations and problems. It was also good to hear from experts and people in charge of large organizations like Oxfam and the Red Cross. And there's mention of the word empowering as well. Just from the teachers, finally, some of them expressed surprise at what their pupils were capable of when left to their own devices, saying, I had no idea just how compassionate and proactive and willing to work together my pupils were when just left to do these things. Because as teachers, we often can have quite a controlled environment in the classroom, and to let go of that and allow them to take some control of what's going on, it can actually be quite hard. But when you have that in a good sort of structured, facilitated way, they can amaze you. And that was the key piece of feedback from teachers. To come to your other point, in the aftermath of the summit, the British Council did contact us and say an opportunity had come up to showcase what's called their Connecting Classrooms Through Global Learning program, which we used to assemble the cluster at that time. And they said there was a VIP event happening in London, and it was His Royal Highness Prince Charles who was hearing about events taking place in the Connecting Classrooms program, and Laxmi was wonderful enough to join us for that. His pupils joined us, and my school, Boroughmuir High School, also joined in the call, and we were able to tell him about our experience. So that was a wonderful thing as well.
Thanks, Tom.
I wonder if there are any other questions from the floor. Yep, Hendricks.
Yes, Tom and the team. I'm interested on somewhere you have indicated some of the consequences and achievements of the first 3-day summit include tree planting and wildlife initiatives, and the list goes on. I just want to find out how has Malawi benefited on these initiatives. Another one is the 1.5 marks, I think, focuses on school-based. Was just wondering that here in Malawi, we have some of the youth that maybe have finished their secondary education. Now they're waiting to go for tertiary. I don't know, how have you considered this group of the youth? Because when we are only focusing on school-based, then definitely this other category of the youth are not being considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 2 excellent questions there, Hendricks. Howard, I wonder whether I can take the point about how has Malawi benefited, and if you can take the point about tertiary students. So, so Hendricks, I mean, we had a school in Zomba in Malawi, St. Anthony's Community Day Secondary School. Wonderful teacher there, Maria Joseph, worked with us. She was already partnered with a school in Scotland, Biggar High School. They'd done a couple of projects previously, but there were quite a few barriers to their participation in a digital summit. You know, there wasn't a laptop available. There wasn't a projector available so that they could watch the keynote speaker session and sit there as an audience to the getting to know you session. So they needed support with a lot of different aspects of the summit, like having catering available and getting the time set aside for the teachers. And we were in touch with Scotland Malawi Partnership, actually, and with officials from the British Council. We brought a number of people together to try and make sure that St. Anthony's had all of the equipment that they needed for the 3 days to be able to run it. So we got them a laptop, we got them a projector, we got them the catering, and they managed to take part in full as any other school was in the whole cluster. And it was wonderful to hear the feedback from them. They were talking about the tree planting they were doing during the 3 days. You could see they sent in photos of them looking at all the problem statements from Mozambique, from Nepal, from Scotland, and learning from them, showing their reflections, and giving us an enormous amount to learn from as well. And you know, the schools in Africa generally, I would just say in Mozambique as well, were producing poetry and beautiful written pieces, conveying their feelings about climate change. But in particular, St. Anthony's, they said they enjoyed the summit very, very much, and we gave them a lot of support to be able to run it. So, I mean, that's what I would contribute. That's one school in Malawi. So we hope to have many, many more in 2022 and 2023. But our key principle with this is that there is equal and equitable access to all aspects of the summit, especially on the technology. And Howard, if you want to come in on the other point.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. And Hendricks, that's really useful, your question about students who've left school and are waiting to go into tertiary education. These are things that we are looking to find out about, to learn. And just you saying that has given us knowledge of the situation in Malawi that we weren't aware of before. And it strikes me that there may be different ways in which that group may participate. It certainly would be sensible, if we are looking for them to participate, that we start discussing what their needs are, what the way in which they might be able to participate, and we'd welcome talking to you about that. So just to be clear, we don't have that group of young people in mind, but we are listening to every school, all of our partners, and aiming as far as possible to accommodate even where we haven't as yet planned for those particular groups. So please, again, you're very welcome to keep this contact going, and we can discuss it in more detail, and we can look at the practicalities of their involvement.
I hope that's okay, Hendricks, on those 2 questions.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the folks we have attending today, either for Laxmi or for me or for Howard? No? Okay. Listen, Howard, I wonder whether we want to talk. Oh, Hendricks, you got another one?
Thank you, Howard and Tom. With the COVID situation currently, we've seen that some travel have been given an okay. I'm just trying to check if at all the October summit, some youth will be able to have a physical meeting, be it in Scotland or be it the venue that you may think of, if at all these youth could come together and share their experiences physically, because I understand this event will maybe be like a hybrid one, whereby others will be participating virtually, others might be need maybe to participate physically. Thank you.
Shall I take that, Tom?
Yes, go for it. Thanks, Howard.
Hendricks, the way in which we have set up the event is that schools are working in their own classrooms, working on their own problems, thinking about that particular context. The event itself came out of the pandemic. The COVID-19 had stopped us really planning around get-togethers, and not that we're opposed at all, of course, to having get-togethers, but the format that we've got enables us to stretch really across the globe, where schools conduct and are facilitated in their own classrooms, but they have an enriched experience by having videos and internet discussions and a series of lesson plans and training. And there's a number of different things that are all happening, but we're referring to that as blended learning, where it takes place in a classroom, but is enriched by other material and other discussions with other people. That's in no way stopping us moving into real world events. That's much more expensive generally to do. But thank you for the question.
Yes, and of course this event was devised and prepared in COVID times, so it does carry with it the legacy of a digital interaction. But I echo what Howard said. You know, we're not ruling out participation from schools who join up, perhaps even in Malawi, to work together. If there aren't any other questions, and I'm conscious of time, I think, Howard, could we put up the link, the final slide on the form that we're going to ask people to have a quick look at?
Yeah, just give me a second.
So I will just say, while you're getting that up, Howard, we have sent out an email, which folks may have seen. And in there is a link to a form. It's the last link in the email. And what we're going to ask is for people to declare whether or not they are interested in taking part in either 1.5 Max 2022 or 1.5 Max in March 2023. So whether or not you wish to take part in these things, and if you do want to take part in them, what capacity you'd like to be involved in them. So as a teacher, or perhaps as a student, if you are one, or as some other local authority or other official who might be wanting to recruit schools for this. We're keen to find out about if you are interested in participating in 1.5 Max or helping us to recruit schools for the summit, then we would like to hear about it. on this link, and you can find this same link on the email which I've sent out recently. So I would ask you, if you can, after this webinar is concluded, just to take 2 minutes, and it will be maximum 2 minutes, to fill out the form that we prepared. Is there anybody that has not received the email, or has not been able to find the email in their inbox? Linda, are you one of them? And Iwita?
I haven't received the email.
Haven't received the email. Okay, thank you very much. Linda, could you do me a favor? If you can, could you put your email in the chat box for me? And Iwita, have you also not received the email? Are you able to tell us, Iwita? I hope I'm getting your name right. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Iwita?
Iwiti.
Iwiti, sorry, Iwiti.
Hello?
Hello.
Tom, perhaps we can bring the meeting to a close at this point, because it's just gone 3 o'clock. And if we can get all the names from people participating in Malawi and from the Scotland-Malawi partnership, that would be ideal, and we can make sure everybody gets the link and an opportunity to provide the feedback.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so listen, what I will do, if you have not received the form, then I will make another attempt to send that. Please check your junk folder, as it may have ended up in there. But I will look at the email addresses again, and if you've not received it, please put your email address in the chat box in this chat that's running. And even after we end the webinar, this chat box will still be open for you on Teams. It should still be open for you to add your email address. But perhaps here's an idea. I will write my email address in the chat box, so that if you're somebody that has not received the link, then I can send it to you if you contact me. So my email is in the chat box there. And Howard, do we have a slide with our social media links?
I'm afraid I don't have it to hand. It's going to be too difficult to bring it up immediately.
That's fine. I will just add in the chat box as well then that we have a Twitter handle if you want to reach out to us on Twitter, which is at 1.5max, where point is a word.
It's on the top of that slide.
Oh, so it is. Yes, it's on the top of the slide as well. I've recorded this webinar. Does anybody object to us sharing this webinar on social media or on our YouTube channel? If you do have any objection to that, please just say, because that's what we would like to do as well, if we can. Okay. All right. Listen, I will just say, as a closing thing, we really are looking forward to hearing from you on the form, and thank you so much for all of your questions. They're really great, and we've got rather a lot of hope for going forward, getting more African schools, getting more participation from different countries in this summit. We have high hopes for what we can achieve through collective action in schools, and for what the implications for that can be in school communities as well. So unless there are no other questions, Iwiti, maybe we can have another go. Do you have your hand up there?
Yes, I'm using a phone, so I can't access the chat, the inbox.
You're unable to see the chat, did you say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What I will do, Iwiti, I do believe I have your email address, so I will contact you after the webinar.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Iwiti. All right. Folks, thank you very much for your time. We're aware we've gone a little over time, but it was a pleasure to speak to all of you, and have a great afternoon. Howard, you're mute.
Thank you very much to everybody. And thank you, Lakshmi, for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.